Ladies and gentlemen, it's yet another very good morning. And on Sweet Reality Kenya TV, as usual, we bring to you very pertinent issues. Today we have yet another very contemporary issue, child rights. And today in our studios is the Executive Director, Kenya Alliance for Advancement of Children, KAACR, representative of Eastern and Southern Africa of ECPAT, ECPAT, International Board of Trustees and board member of Eastern Africa Child Rights Network, EACRN, Mr. Tim Ekesa. Karibu sana Bwana Tim Ekesa to Sweet Reality Kenya TV. I am your presenter Otieno Isaiah. Karibu Bwana Tim Ekesa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on air, Mr. Chen.
To start with Mr. Timothy Ekesa, just briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Timothy Ekesa, as you rightly said. I'm the Executive Director of the Kenya Alliance for Advancement of Children, which is a child rights NGO that deals with children's rights in Kenya, but also is an NGO that has status with the UN, the ECOSOC status, UN special consultative status with the UN, and at the same time, we have observer status with the Africa Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child at the EU level. Besides that, we're also members of the global movement against violence and members of the local partners of ECPAT International, which is a body that deals with issues of trafficking and online abuse of children. Recently, I was privileged to be elected to sit on the ECPAT Board of Trustees, representing the Eastern and Southern Africa region, which covers 20 members from 20 countries from the region.
Thank you, Bwana Director. Several people frown upon child rights. Could we kindly know what does child rights mean?
Child rights is not a new phenomenon in the world. All over the world, people have enjoyed their rights. Rights are basically entitlements. These are God-given things. They cannot be given or taken away. And even in the African society, we had rights and responsibilities. But legally, our rights are framed up in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights of 1948, which spells out which rights every human being of this world has. And children, being part of the human world, they also enjoy their rights, and their rights are covered within instruments that are at the global level, regional level, and even the local level. And the beauty with that is that we know that we work in different worlds, and every society has got a way of bringing up their own children. And I think that's why some instruments were put together specifically to ensure that we document some of the rights. Africans, I know we have a way that we actualize the rights of children. There was a way we used to do it, but I think because it was not documented so much, we are not able to, we do it by passing on. So rights are actually entitlements. They are things that everybody has, just like a human being, like an adult, like women, a youth, they all have rights. Children also have rights.
What are the common violations of child rights?
The common violations of child rights that we know or that we experience as an organization, the most prevalent form of violation is neglect. And neglect is the basic form of violation that leads to all other violations. We also know that there's a lot of issues of violence against children, especially physical violence, emotional violence, psychosocial violence. The most recent kind of violence that we experience nowadays is online child sexual abuse, exploitation and abuse. That's violence that is being caused through the current issues of the social media, internet, it is now becoming so prevalent, and the whole world is actually seeing many children being abused, either being hoodwinked, being exposed to pornography, others even being trafficked, and even others being killed. Africa, we still have the biggest challenge of violence. Child labor is still a big issue in Africa, although there's a lot of work ILO has done, but child labor still remains a basic form of violence, where we have many children who actually work as laborers in various markets, in fish industries, in sugar plantations, working as house girls, as housemaids, is a big issue of violence. But also we have corporal punishment and physical violence of children. And then also the other kind of violence is the violence that children get when they're being processed through the judicial system. The child justice system, the system is not really well framed up for children.
So we have a legal framework for child rights, maybe internationally, regionally, or nationally. Do we have the legal instruments?
Yes, yeah, we have a clear legal framework for child rights. As I said earlier, at the international level, at the regional level, and even at the country level. Internationally, we have one instrument we call the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted by UN member organization in 1989, the 20th of November 1989. It is the international legal instrument that guides issues of child rights all over the world. And the beauty with that instrument is that it's universal, it cuts across all countries, but it is also optional. Countries can decide to sign it or not. But as we speak right now, and it is only the USA that have not appended their signature to it, but they recognize it. So that's one of the instruments that is very key. At the Africa level, AU level, we also have a regional instrument which really spells out the rights of it. Is called the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. It's a charter that actually African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children. The charter borrows a lot. It was passed in 1990. It borrows a lot from the CRC that I talked about. But one thing is that the charter is unique. It has about 5 differences with the UNCRC. One thing with the UNCRC, it just spells out the rights of children. It is a convention that has got 56 articles, and 42 of those articles just spells out the rights of children. And then the rest of the articles, they are concerned on how or the CRC is being implemented by various countries. But the African Charter is very unique in that it brings in 5 articles that brings out the uniqueness of Africa. One of them is that it states very clearly that we know that in Africa, when you talk about a child has a very special place in the African sense. It's not just like any other thing. So that important place that a child has in the African setting is one unique thing. The second unique thing that the Charter brings in is the whole issue of responsibilities. Article 31, it now brings out the responsibilities of children. We know that the CRC talks about rights, but it doesn't talk about responsibilities. But in Africa, we know that children have responsibilities too. So, and that's why that Article 31 is very important on child participation and on responsibilities of children, which is very key for us as an African country, that I just don't see a child as only having rights, but also having responsibilities. A third difference that the Charter has is it gives more emphasis on issues of education. Article in the CRC, Article 27, it spells about a child has a right to education. We know that in the developed world, once you say education, you know what it is. There's a system in where a child is processed from the time they are born to the time they finish school. But in Africa, it's very. If you say a child has a right to education in Africa, which education? Are you talking about early childhood? Are you talking about EC? Are you talking about primary? Are you talking about tertiary? The Charter spells out a bit more in an elaborate way about issues of education for children in Africa, because the situation is not universal and the situation is not balanced. The fourth part that again is expanded further in the charter is the right to health. I know again in the developed world, if you talk about right to health, the system is in place and the issues of rights are very clear. But for Africa, health, are you talking about adolescent health rights? Are you talking about early childhood? Are you talking about are you talking about issues of immunization? So it expands that issue of health in a bigger way than the CRC does. The fifth difference that the charter has, it brings in the whole aspect of children of imprisoned mothers, because it's a big challenge for for Africa. When a mother makes a mistake and is imprisoned, and is a small child who is 2 to 3 years, that child is also in prison. Nobody looks at the welfare of those children. There are no facilities to take care of children of mothers who have been incarcerated. So those are the 5 differences that actually the charter brings up. Then all this is now you come down to the national level. The Kenya Constitution is very clear. It actually protects the rights of the child. When we were working on the Constitution of Kenya review, the current law that we have, we did a lot of work to ensure that we bring in the whole issue of child rights. The old constitution never had anything on children or childhood, but we worked so hard, lobbied parliamentarians to make sure that we have a section that deals with children. And that's why Article 53 of the Constitution of Kenya clearly spells about that every child has a right and the best interest of the child will be a key thing to be taken. Then that, so obviously it's now translated further into the Children's Act of 2001, which was passed before the Constitution, but now it has been revised and we have a new act, the Children's Act 2022, which is the basic law that deals with children's rights, besides other laws that we have in the country that also have aspects of child rights. As I said, the convention has got 56 articles. But simply for somebody to understand the convention in a simple way, if we don't go through all the articles, we can classify those articles or group them into 4 areas. One area is to make it for ease for everybody to understand. We say a child has got a right to life and survival. So there are life and survival rights, a group of them that cuts across the 54 articles that I talked about, which means that a child has got a right to life. So you cannot take away the life of the child, and a child has got a life to survive. Things like good nutrition, things like clothing, shelter, those are actually rights that lead a child to life and survival. The second group or pillar that you can call for rights are the rights to development. These are rights that help a child to be able to develop. These include education, right to religious, right to choose religion, right to leisure and play, and right to that enables a child to be able to social security, to be able to belong. Those are rights that we could group as right to development. The other pillar, the third pillar of rights according to the CRC, is right to protection. These are many rights that actually lead a child to be protected. And a child needs to be protected from exploitation, from violence, being exploited, being protected from being misused, and also being exploited from harmful practices that impact on a child. We know that harmful practices in Africa are still a big challenge in many parts of the continent. Then the final fourth area of the grouping is what we call right to participation. These are rights that enable a child to be able to give their opinions, to be able to associate, to be able to also influence decisions that affect them. And this is an area that CAC has been very key in ensuring that we give children a voice, or we give them space where they can be able to raise their voice. And we do this through forming what we call child right clubs, clubs that are led by children, and clubs where children can be able to share their views. And in Kenya, we've done so well. We've actually moved to a level where we now have a junior government, what we are calling the Kenya Children Assembly. This is actually a mirror of the mayor of the government, where we also have a child president, a deputy president with a cabinet, and they are able also to mirror the current parliament that we have and give their views and give their share. Nowadays, all policies that we work on, we ensure that children have given their views. Then also we work so much with this structure when we are making periodic reports. to the UNCRC and to the African Charter, which are made every 5 years from the time of signing the CRC. Again, just to talk about the CRC a bit, that I've talked about the 4 pillars that summarize the CRC. The principles of the CRC are very important for us, and they are key even for the listeners to be able to be sure of. The CRC has got 4 important principles. And the first principle, which is Article 3 of the CRC, is best interest of the child. It simply means that anything we do it in a triangular form. If you look at the apex of the triangle, we put best interest of the child, BSC. It means that for everything we do, we put the rights of the best interest of the child, for not our own interest, but the interest of the child. When we do anything, let us make sure that it will benefit the child rather than us. That's a very important principle for all of us to know, because that's the only way we get children at their own level, and the only way the things we do, they'll have meaning to the children. Then you look at the other lower part of the triangle, the right angle side of the triangle is non-discrimination, Article 2 of the CRC. It simply says that for everything you do for children, make sure you don't discriminate them on any level, be it on race, on color, the ability, disability. Every child is a child. We really need to look at the children. They don't have to be children from white, black, yellow children. No, a child is a child. And that's why I say the CRC is really universal. Then you look at the other far end of the triangle is what we call child's opinion. It's Article 12 of the CRC. What I've talked about, that we need to get the views of the child. In everything we do, the opinion of the child is very important. And that's why we really say that for everything we do, make sure you have the rights of the child. Then inside the triangle is what we call right and survival. We are saying that if you take the best interest of the child, don't discriminate the children, and get the opinion, then a child will be able to live and survive. That's Article 6 of the CRC. So we put it down as the center, that we want the child to live and survive. And we do all these things because we want the child to live and survive, because children don't remain children forever. Once they reach the age of 18, they actually become adults. And that's how the CRC spells it. That's how our Constitution in Kenya spells it. So we want to give them the best, because when they are children, if they get the best environment, then they grow up to be responsible youth and responsible adults.